got people who don't know you, even though you've been in the news and you were mayor of West Pelzer, seemed like forever. So before you've been sworn in now, so you're official.
I have been.
And before we, I just want to let people get to know you a little bit. So tell me where you were born.
So for the past 12 years, I've started off every conversation with my name is Blake Sanders, and I'm a husband, father, landscape architect, planner, former mayor of the town of West Pelzer, former professor at Clemson University, and this year I'm blessed because of you to add your representative in the State House for District 9. I always start out by saying that I'm a husband and father first because people mean more to me than anything else, and especially my wife Ashley and my two children Lane and Gracie. And the reason that's important is that's why I wanted to be a public servant. In 2011, I served, from 2011 to 2015, I served 4 years on town council in West Pelzer, and then in 2015 decided that I would take the plunge into the executive branch and be the mayor of the town of West Pelzer. A town of 1,200 people, which grew by about 20% during my tenure without annexation. We were able to look at some very conservative policies, and as far as rolling back taxes, working to increase public safety, and from there, I knew that I could continue to make a difference if I invested in people. The reason that I continue to invest in people today is because there are so many that have invested in me over the years, whether that's current or former mayors or senators or representatives. I can look back across and see conversations that I had with Mayor Crenshaw or conversations that I've had with Mayor Roberts or Mayor Burgess in Williamston, and they continue to invest in me as a person first. And so I look forward for the next 2 years to investing in the people of District 9 first. And I always say people over politics.
Well, let's talk about people. Where did you grow up?
Absolutely. So I grew up on a gravel road in the unincorporated area of the town of Pelzer, Joe Black Road. We grew up surrounded by farmland, which is still farmland. A graduate of Palmetto High School, a graduate of Tri-County Tech, and a graduate of Clemson University.
And where did you go to school? Elementary school.
Oh, yeah.
Way back, yeah.
Oh, way back.
First of all, do you have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I have a younger sister named Amber, and we have what I like to call as a blended household. And so my parents, we had an aunt that lived with us who's 4 years older than me, and I also call her my sister sometimes. And then I have a younger cousin who came to live with us, Tyler, who is in the military, and so I call him my younger brother. But I have one biological sister, and so our 3-bedroom, 1-bath house that we all grew up in together is probably where I learned to invest in people, because we had to share one bathroom with multiple siblings. But blessed to grow up in that community, because I went to West Pelzer Elementary School, went to Palmetto Middle School, Palmetto High School. And so being mayor with the school that you grew up in your municipal boundaries is vitally important, because I got to go talk to all of the grades about local government and how government's not out to get you, and we're not out to tax you to death. We want to create policies that are best for the people. And so now I get to look back in 2016, when I went to the first 5th grade class to talk about local government. That's almost 10 years from now. And so those 5th grade students now have their own families, or they're in college now, and they get to come back and they still call me the Mustache Mayor, which is always fun to see them in the grocery store with now their little ones or their spouses.
Were there still some teachers there that you had when you were in school?
There were still some teachers there that I had in school, so it was always different to walk through the hallways with a lapel pin on, saying that I was the mayor, and knowing that I grew up there. We did have some really good administrators while I was in elementary, middle, and high school. Specifically, Principal Doug Atkins, who's on the school board. He probably gave me my last paddling while I was in high school, and then Dr. Mason Gary, who's also on school board. Both invested in me as a student. Even though I excelled in classes and graduated very high in my class. They knew I didn't test very well. So they worked with me with an SAT score that barely got me into Clemson. They worked with me to kind of help find the profession that was best for me. I was extremely artistic. I loved to talk to people, and so I started off actually in education. And I found out really fast that while I love children and I love talking for 8 hours a day was not something that I could do and teach the younger generation. And so I switched to architecture and then ultimately landscape architecture.
Would your friends growing up and maybe your teachers back then thought, you know, one day this guy's going to be in the State House of South Carolina?
There were probably a few that thought that I would be in Columbia, but that I would probably be in the penitentiary and not and not in the State House. But I did have one teacher specifically, Susie Turbyville, who lives in the city of Anderson. She was my launch teacher, and she took us to Washington, D.C. It happened to be the week that Nixon died, but she took us to D.C. so that we could see our local senators, so that we could learn how the federal government works. And then we went to Charleston and talked about similar things, and then ultimately in Columbia and talked. And one of the things that I remember from that trip was meeting Strom Thurmond. And whether you agree or disagree with his policies or his history, it was indifferent, because the one thing that I remembered about Senator Thurmond is that he shook every student's hand in line and had a